friends, welcome to She Is Known. I am so excited today because you have a treat in store. You are going to have a few minutes with me and my friend Angela here, who is also my life coach. We're going to be talking about how to really hear God's voice and how to use his voice that you hear to get unstuck, to be free from baggage and all the things. So we'll just jump right in. But first, Angela, would you introduce yourself and let people know who you are and what you do?
I would love to. I'm Angela Quinteros. I am a former educator. I'm a boy mom times three, all teenagers, and my husband and I are celebrating our 21st wedding anniversary on Friday.
Yay!
And as Angela said, I am a life coach for Christian women because my life coaching style is all about putting God first, and so it's a little bit of spiritual mentorship as well. And I'm just super excited to be here for this conversation. And yeah, get ready because there's going to be probably some great stories, but also just some practical tips for what can you do to just draw nearer to God, get to know him a little bit better so that you can hear his voice more clearly, and then use God and tools like having a pocket verse, which you'll hear about in a little bit, and for getting unstuck for those moments where you just kind of feel stuck or blah or a little funky chicken, and then just turning to God in a practical way that can fit right into your busy lifestyle.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question I hear people ask is, how do I know that this is from God and not my own thoughts or the thoughts of people around me that I maybe ask their opinion on? So let's just jump in. Like, what's one tangible way to start with that we can know that this is from God and not our own opinions or thoughts?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind for me is God first and God fast. So oftentimes what my clients will come to me with is they're seeking clarity on a big decision or a life transition that they're in the middle of, and they're wanting to make sure that they're in God's will. And at that point, there's already a lot of confusion and chaos and multiple voices that are happening because I'm usually like the fourth or fifth person that they've reached out to. They've already talked to their mom, they've already talked to their pastor, to their sister, to their best friend, to their husband, to God as well. But at that point, there's so many voices. They've listened to podcasts, they've gone and checked out different people's Instagram profiles or whatever it is, done their own homework and research. And so we're just kind of, we've overconsumed. We're inundated with like all the information and the different viewpoints and opinions. And then we're confused because when we go to God, we're like, I don't know if that was from God. I feel like it could have been, but I'm not sure. So God first and God fast is like, okay, so if that's where the confusion is coming from, let's turn to God first and let's ask him for guidance, for wisdom and discernment around this area in our life or the decision that we're facing. Or it could be a friendship struggle that we're going through and we're just not sure how to navigate it. And so we're wanting to do it in a Christian way. So seek God first and go into his word. Yeah. And that can be maybe hard for, if that's not something that's part of your daily repertoire, is like reading God's word. You might not know how to do that or even where to open your Bible to. And that's where having tools like the YouVersion Bible app or a devotional can really come in handy, because you can just literally, if it's a devotional, you can just kind of turn in the table of contents and be like, what kind of stands out to me here with whatever's relevant to the thing it is that you're stuck in. Or if it's the YouVersion Bible app, you can literally search by almost any word or title and it will give you devotionals, scriptures. You can even just Google Bible about, like Bible about anxiety, Bible about friendship, Bible about finances, and it will give you verses that are relevant to those topics. And go there first. That's where God uses the Bible and his word to speak to us and to teach us. And that's where you're going to typically hear him most clearly. And then once you kind of feel like you've gotten a seed planted or like you've gotten a little bit of confirmation from God, now go out and say, okay, God, I think this is where you're leading me. Like, can you show me confirmation? So now when I call my friend Angela and be like, hey, I feel like God is really calling me to speak on this or offer a retreat for this. What do you think? Well, if she instantly is like, oh my gosh, I was just talking to two of my friends
Mhm.
and we were talking about this exact same topic. Well, that's confirmation for me of like, okay, I did hear God clearly. This is a need. So that's just one example of like how that can play out in real life.
Yeah, I do that a lot with like, what does the Bible say about this? And then sometimes you can't always trust Google. So then I will go to that Bible verse and then I'll read it
Yes.
myself. And then I read before and I read after, or like the Concordance Bible. There's a book called The Preacher's Bible, I believe is what it's called. And you can literally look up something and then it tells you stories of the Bible. Of that, you know, kind of aligned with that. But yeah, I like the idea. I never used to do that, like specifically with friendships, where I would just jump into friendships and be like, hi, here I am. We're besties now because we have some common, you know, denominator of some sort, or we clicked or we got along. And then later I realized I was pouring into cups that God never intended me to pour into. And maybe because that person reminded me of something that hasn't healed in my life yet, or a relationship that I'm still maybe hurt by, and they kind of resembled that. And so my brain, and way back in there, thinks like, oh, this is another opportunity for me to make that right or make it work this time.
Yeah.
And really, it's just there's certain personalities I just think that don't click with me, or certain traits of unhealing from somebody that maybe I don't need to be participating in.
Yeah.
And so I have had to learn. I actually had a friend ask me, like, do you ever pray over a friendship before you jump in? I was like, huh? What a concept.
Yeah.
I never thought of that. So I think like if we feel something is planted in us, like if God were to say to me, go do this, or I feel it, I sometimes I will say the majority of time, because it's an area I'm learning, is I'll just start like, hey, what do you think about this? Or I was thinking about doing this. And then I just jump.
Yeah.
And I need to stop and go, okay, God, was that just me? Or was that, do I have time for that? Is that really your plan? Just because I think it sounds good or sounds fun, should I do it?
Yeah.
And then when you get kind of the discernment of like, yeah, child, I was speaking to you.
Yeah.
Then it's like, okay, then go ask other people. But I tend to ask first and then go,
Yeah.
oh, okay, God, so everybody else says yes. So what about you?
Which is a totally normal reaction, right? Like we, especially if you're like, I know I've gone through this myself where like, I'll be in my Bible time, like I'll be in my morning time with God, my journal's out, I'm in his word there. And so I think, of course, this came from God. I'm talking, like I'm with him right now. And 95% of the time it did come from God, but where I'm still learning with my own discernment and just life experience is that I've done the same thing where I'll like get this idea and I'll take it straight to my coach, or I'll just do it without even really processing it or thinking about it. And then things don't go the way that I thought they were going to. And I was like, God, I swear I heard this from you. Like, I know this was from you. Why did it not? Like, so for me as a life coach, if it's a group program and I feel like this is a program or an offer God has laid on my heart to do, sometimes I've just gone straight into it and set it up, offered it, put it out there for the people and been like, you have to have this. I know you need it. God told me this is for you. And then it's like crickets, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, God, so I know you like planted this seed in my heart. Like, why is there no fruit coming from this?
Yeah.
And what he's been teaching me is exactly that piece of like, okay, but we didn't finish the conversation, Angela. Like he's like, you never came back to me and asked what I thought about it, or you never asked for further direction. So I'm starting to learn to ask God, is this for right now or is this for later? Because I learned that it is an idea from him. It is a vision that he's planting in my heart, or a seed that he's planting. But if I rush it and I just jump right in without really going back and seeking him further, then I get in over my head, or I find myself in a position that I wasn't prepared for. Whereas if I just take a minute to ask God, like, okay, God, is this for now or is this for later? Is this a group thing? Is it an individual thing? Is it a retreat or is it an online offer? Like, there's so much more we can go back to God with, right?
Yeah.
Like, take the conversation another level deeper.
Yeah, I think one of the best pieces of advice that you gave me was to have a business meeting with God. And I remember for about 2 or 3 days, I would put a notes thing in my phone of like topics I wanted to talk to God about.
Mhm.
And then I went to a space where it was quiet, where I knew nobody was there. I had all day if I needed. And I had my paper because I had taken it off my notes and wrote it because I didn't want my phone near me. So I wrote it on a piece of paper. And then I was like, I invited the Holy Spirit in. I asked God to be a part of the meeting. And then I started the meeting and was like, first item on the agenda, this. And I had my pencil in my hand and my piece of paper. And and there was things where I felt he was like, we're not going to talk about that right now.
Mhm.
And I was like, moving on to item number
Yeah.
2. And then later, after we got down here, I felt like he brought me back and was like, and it could be that maybe I just wasn't waiting to hear from him. It could be that I was like, okay, I think he's going to say this. Are you going to say that?
Yeah.
And then he had to get me distracted to where then he can get through.
Yeah.
So I think discernment is the big one, and waiting, having peace. So what would you say to somebody who's like, I really feel God placed this on my heart, but everyone around me is saying, no, I don't see that for you?
I would say if you really do feel like it's something God has placed on your heart, and especially if you feel like he's given you action steps to take, even if the people around you don't understand it, or they don't feel like you have the capacity for it, you have the time for it, whatever it is that their kind of argument is, you kind of just have to like say, thank you for your opinion, but like, I just know like I need to be obedient to God first. And it also kind of depends on who you are. Like I've run across this with my husband. He supports what I do, but there are times where we kind of have a little bit of conflict because he doesn't fully understand, like, what does a life coach even do?
Yeah.
You work from home. What do you do all day?
Yeah.
Like, are you actually working? Like, is it, because it's been an adjustment for us.
Right.
I was in education. He's used to me going to work by packing a lunch and heading out the door for the day. And then I
Yeah.
come home and so this concept of me going to work, but not actually leaving our home has been a big adjustment for us. And there's been things like retreats for women. That's a big one. From his perspective, he sees it as like a time suck. He's like, this takes so much of your time, and then you don't make very much money on it. It's a few $100s for a whole Saturday. And I was like, I can't, I just like, retreats is what God created me to do. I know this now, that like, that's my primary. And then the one-on-one coaching is almost like secondary. And it used to be the opposite, but God is showing me like, no, you were meant to teach, and you were meant to gather groups of women and create these experiences for them. And it's not about the money. And I do believe that the money will come. This will be a reliable source of income for our family with time. But with my husband, that this has been one of those things where he's like, are you sure? Or is that really the right way? Like, isn't there a better way for you to make more money? And I just have to like respectfully tell him, like, we have to trust the process. I know this is what God is calling me to do.
Right.
I know this is how he's asking me to show up and serve women and create these experiences for women. And every single time I've had one, the transformation that happens, the connections from complete strangers who leave the retreat and become friends, and then start going to church or bring their kids, and then now their kids are starting to attend church, like just the ripple effect of what has happened at some of these. Like, I just know, I have 100% confidence this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So you do have to sometimes navigate that, and the only person you're aiming to please is God. And that's really hard for us type A people pleasers.
Yes. Well, and I think it's like the story of the Bible where the master gave the servants the different amount of money and what they did with it. I think, God has a big vision for us, and we want to go from like 0.0 to 0.90 right away. But he's like, okay, let me see how you really manage what I'm giving you. Let me see how are you committed? Are you really, I'm going to throw, I'm going to allow some things to come your way that are going to, feel like roadblocks. How do you handle those? Because that's him growing your faith, but also growing your, obedience muscle, and growing, what he's, like, you didn't learn how to become a teacher by showing up on the first day and going, hey, I'm a teacher now. You had to learn how to study, and you had to put, lessons together and deal with all that. So you had to eventually work yourself up to being a principal. So I think he does the same thing with us.
Yeah. And I love that you mention barriers and roadblocks, because I feel like that's another reason why a lot of you stay stuck, right? You maybe are staying stuck because you are afraid to start in the first place, because you're hearing from God, but you're not getting confirmation from the other people around you. And so that's hard, right? How do I start when I truly feel like I'm alone, which we have kind of talked about. Remember that it's through Christ, right? Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And when we look and seek God first, seek first the kingdom and he will make your path straight. Like there's so many verses where it's so clear that like God is the way. And that will, but it doesn't mean that you'll be without barriers. It doesn't mean that you'll be without trials. It doesn't mean, and that's going to cause you to feel some doubt and insecurity of like, you're going to question, did I hear God correctly? Because if I did, why is this so hard? And it's hard because spiritual warfare is real.
Yeah.
Satan is out there, y'all. And
Yeah.
you gotta be alert and you gotta be
target.
like, you're his target. Because
Yeah.
if you're putting yourself out there for the kingdom and the growth of kingdom impact and to bring Christians together or non-Christians into faith and expose them to Christ, Satan doesn't want that. So he's going to work against you. So some of your troubles, roadblocks, barriers will come from that. And then some of them is just life. And it's designed to distract you or cause doubt or insecurities, raise up things from maybe from your past that are telling you like, see, you weren't supposed to do this because otherwise it would be easier, or you would have had 100 followers by now, or you would have had this by now. And I can tell you, I'm going on year 3 of doing this, and the process has been slow. It's been steady, but it's been slow, much slower than I would have thought, knowing when I left my job as a principal and into this thinking, oh, time freedom, financial freedom.
This is where God wants
I'm my
me,
own boss. This is where God wants me. It's just going to be full of abundance and blessings. And like it has, but not in the way that I thought I was going to see them. You know, like we tend to think of numbers and finances and tangible things that show us success the way the world sees success. And kingdom success feels and looks different. It looks like a more stable home environment. It looks like more positive relationships with like your spouse and your loved ones and your friends. It looks like peace in the middle of trials and storms, because you are walking so closely with God, you know that you're on that path. But that's not, it's not always tangible, and it's definitely not what the world would deem as success. So it's that, I mean, that's why a job like mine exists, right? Because I help you tune out the noise of the world and tune in to God and like staying committed to that pathway and that calling that he's placed on you. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like this podcast is a perfect example of us aligning, because that's something on my face. It's real, y'all. Y'all, I'm from Texas now. But like for me, I felt God calling me to start a podcast for years, maybe 3 years now, probably along the same time. That's kind of weird now I think about it. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll do Friendship Fridays. That's what you want, right? And then I would do Friendship Fridays, and then all of a sudden I would be like, who do you think you are? Like Friendship Fridays, like you have friendships that have failed. You have friendships that have struggled. And who are you to talk about friendships? Like you're the last person. And I would think not so much of like what other people would think, but it's the friends that I had broken friendships with. Not that there's like a huge cluster, but just a couple. And I would think if they saw this or heard this, they'd be like, who, like, let me tell some stories about her, you know? And so then I would stop, and then I'd go, oh, okay, I've got to pick it up because I feel God just prompting. And I would ask, like, please take this away if this is not your will. And then months would go by, and then I'd be praying like, okay, God, do you want me to revamp this? Do you want me to start it up? And then I'd be in the middle of that, and someone would go, hey, are you going to do your Friendship Fridays? And I'd be like, okay, God. And then I would talk myself into doing it again. And then I would bow out again. And then I developed Elevate, and Elevate was another like, okay, God, I'll do it, but we're going to do Elevate. We're going to do Elevate, an in-person one. And then at the same thing, then I would start. And there was the last pivotal Elevate where I kind of was like, okay, God, I just surrender, is when I posted it very quietly in the midst of some other posts, like, oh, da 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 da. And then and then post. And I had some friends show up, and the whole time, the whole day, I could not, I had roadblock. God, what do you want me to talk about? What am I supposed to talk about today? And I literally, nothing would come up other than, please God, do not let anybody show up. And I literally was crying. I was ticked off because I listened to the nudge of do the elevate. I agreed to do it quietly, but I did. And now I have the real risk of people walking through the door, and I can't for the life of me think of what to talk about. And so I was like, God, you asked, I feel you told me to do this, and now I'm doing it, and I don't even have anything to talk about. Like, don't let anybody show up. And I literally was like, yeah, please, God, do not let anybody show up. Do not. And I was crying. I was mad. And then the door opened, and I was like, crap, people are here. And they gave me a Bible thumping, butt whooping about to knock it off. And that's when I was like, I need a life coach. I need somebody who's going to get me unstuck and help me move forward with confidence. And when we met, that's what you were like, what do you want from me, basically, or what are you coming to me for? And I was like, I just want to walk humbly and confidently in who God says I am, because I feel that God's put this on my heart, and I'm holding myself back with all this. Who do you think you are? What are you doing? Like all these thoughts. And I think sometimes
the smallest way I can show up and be obedient.
Yeah. And I tried. I was like, okay, Friendship Fridays. or I'll just write a post about, something that God put on my heart. And I was only semi being obedient. But I think sometimes we keep ourselves from hearing God's voice because we talk for him. We're like, oh yeah, I hear that, but let me just tell you what I think, and then we'll go from there. But I'm really not going to come back to your opinion, God. I'm just going to move forward. But then also by knowing, like, I feel like our core and our gut really knows when God's speaking to us. Like, I think women especially have this intuition that's God given. And I think at the core, we're like, okay, I know this is what God wants for me. We up here in this level, we're like, well, I think maybe, let me ask some friends, because maybe you're hoping they'll tell you no. And then you're like, oopsie, wasn't the right thing. Yeah. But I think when we know this core gut of where what God's asking from us, we get so stuck here because we're so stuck, I guess is the only word, with past hurts, past baggage, past insecurities. And then, like you said, spiritual warfare is real, and the devil knows God's got a plan for you. He knows your heart because you speak it. I want to be obedient, but I'm also like, who do I think I am? And he's like, oh, I get it. She thinks she's a piece of crap. Yes, you are. You are a piece of crap. And then you're like, oh yeah, see, I hear that. I'm confirming it because my thoughts are my mouth is telling my mind, and my mind's believing it. And now I'm seeing it because I'm confirming it. So it must be true. And so that's where I love what you do, because you have helped me. I said this the other day, I'm not the same person I was when you met me. Technically I am, but I'm no longer walking around thinking, who do you think you are? I have doubts where I'm like, oh God, but it isn't me. I, for so long, took matters in my own hands of like, what am I going to say? What do I have to say? And I'm like, I don't really have anything to say. God, what are you going to say through me? And just being obedient and showing up and going, okay, God, like, you're going to use my stuttering. You're going to use me saying weird things. You're going to use me spitting because of my Invisalign. Like, you're going to use all of that. And it is what it is. I can't change who I am. I can grow and I can mature and I can heal. But my personality traits, my goofiness, my, cutting myself. Oh, that didn't mean to flip anybody off, but my middle finger. But like, that's just who I am. So I love that that's what you help women do. You help women free from the shame or doubt. And then that allows them to hear what God's calling them to do more clearly with assurance, and then take the step to do it.
And it's really, like everything that you just listed that you would probably categorize as a fault in yourself or something that maybe has turned people off to you in the past or whatever. Those are all things that make you that much more relatable, approachable, and real to 95% of women out there. And that's why for me too, like my coaching and my brand and the platform, Faithful and Fierce Coaching, it's about living your life like unapologetically, unfiltered. You're for God and you're with God. Because when you do that, and what I've seen in you, like the biggest transformations I've seen in you is you're seeing your uniqueness as gifts from God.
Yeah.
You're seeing some of those little quirks and some of those things that, you know, you think are silly or that could potentially make someone laugh or think, oh, roll their eyes or whatever. But really it's endearing. It's a personality trait that like makes you feel approachable and it makes you feel real and people connect to you really quickly, you know?
Yeah.
And so those are traits because you're not trying to be perfect and you're not trying to be, it's not, there's no pretenses here. It's not pretentious. It's not too good for you, to not good enough, all the things. It's just like, here I am. And when you approach it with here I am, God use me, you know, he will. And the more, and as you let him, then you gain evidence that, oh, okay, wow, he actually did use me. I know the impact I had because that woman gave me that feedback, or that person told me how much that Elevate event impacted them, how they needed to hear that message like so badly, and it just spoke straight to their heart and their current situation in life. And it's like, you wouldn't have those experiences if you didn't just step forward in faith and be obedient, even when you feel scared, even when you don't feel good enough. And then the more you do it, the more confidence you gain, and the more clearly you start to hear God for the future times and the future decisions, you know?
Yeah, you don't have to be cool. That was me. I thought I had to be cool. What would anybody want to hear from me on, because I'm not really cool. I feel like I've always stood out to some degree. I grew up in Southern California where there's blonde hair, blue eyes, and tan skin. I have hazel eyes with red hair and my skin burns. I was kind of a nerd, and I always took that as like a badge of I'm not good enough. Right, because I'm not, yes, I don't fit in. And what I've had to learn is I'm not going to fit in everywhere. And that's okay. Who I have what others need to hear from God, God's gonna bring them to me, and they'll be attracted to me because they relate to goofiness or dorkiness or being an outsider of not typically what's cool. And I've learned to, instead of shying away from that because I didn't hold up to a standard, I've embraced it, and I'm walking more confident, like, yeah, I'm not your cup of tea. That's okay. Somebody else will. And I hope you get fed from them, but I have people that I am their cup of tea and they're my cup of tea. Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah. It's not personal. I think that's my next tattoo. It's not personal. It's not personal. It's not personal. It's not personal. And we aren't meant, I mean, look at Jesus. When Jesus walked this earth, he attracted and he repelled. There were people that were attracted to Jesus exactly because of who he was, who he said he was, the things he was doing and proving through his actions. And there were people that were completely repelled by that and only saw him as this like holier than thou person. Like, how dare he? Who does he think he is? But why? Because these people's spotlight was suddenly dimmed a little bit because the real Messiah was walking the earth. Yeah. But he didn't ever change who he was to try to adapt or please those people. Like when Jesus was in front of the Pharisees, he didn't act a different way than he did when he was in front of the people at a well, or the people at the lakes when he would address the 5,000 or whatever. Like, he was the same in every place. Yeah. And I mean, that's also part of why we know we can trust him, because we have evidence in the Bible that shows us when God says, I am the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, it's true. He is the one constant you can depend on in your life. Oh, yes. Every other person, every other thing, every other situation,
it is all fallible. It's all going to fail you and let you down at some point. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be the person that you trusted most as a human being on this planet.
Yep.
They are also human. They will let you down at some point. But when you have a relationship with God and you're turning to God first and God fast, that's where that second part of that comes from, is like when you are hurt by humans and by people, go to God first with it, seek his will, his wisdom, his guidance on like, okay, how do I handle this? Because it might not be personal.
Yeah.
Just because you had one bad interaction with somebody, or somebody showed you something that questioned whether you could continue to trust them or not, it could have just been a completely unrelated situation going on for them, and they just responded to you in a way that you internalized.
Yeah.
In a way that wasn't intended because of our own stuff. And so seeking God and being like, okay, God, how do I address this? Should I go talk to the person and just clear the air? Do I need to just give them space? What's my role in this? How do you want me to respond?
Yeah, I like that, because
really
I think in the past, I've gone to friends and said, like, this happened to me, what do you think? And that's a form of gossip. I think if we go to God first, a lot of times God will be like, just let me work that out, you know, or maybe he'll give you compassion for them, and you'll see them in a different light, or maybe you'll feel the peace of just like, you know what?
Yeah.
It's not personal. Yeah. But when you talk to somebody, if I say, hey, this person said this, now I'm perpetuating, you know, the feelings. I'm perpetuating all of that. And God always has to be the first line of defense, of offense, everything. That we go to him first. And then, like you said, fast. So before, if somebody offends you, instead of going, or whatever, go, you know what, God, I'm surrendering this to you. Do I need to talk to them? Do I need to share this? Do this, you know, and if it's something that continually happens like a pattern, then obviously, God, is this something we need to bring before a pastor or a mentor that can kind of work this out, or to them personally? So I love that. Okay, so wrapping this up, what would you say to the person who's like, I'm praying every day, I'm in my word every day, I'm going to church, I'm in Bible studies, and when I call on God to have a conversation with me or to be a part of my day, I hear crickets. I don't hear him. I don't see him. I don't feel him. Like, hello, did you forget about me? Like, what, am I doing something wrong? Am I that lukewarm Christian that's like, depart from me? Like, what do you say to the person who's feeling like, I'm doing all the things and I'm still wondering where he's at?
I think that can be a hard place to be in, first of all. And it's you're not alone. And it's possible that you're not doing anything wrong. Sometimes in those situations, it's our own concept of timing, and it's our own desires of timelines, or how we think something should go, that we should have an answer by now. And so we're just losing patience. It could literally be just as simple as God's not speaking to us quickly enough. It's not that he's not listening, but it's just that we're not getting the answer we want. And so then we think he's not listening. Or we think he's not talking to us because it's not in alignment with what we wanted. And so that, honestly, it takes practice. It takes practice and discipline of just coming to God and surrendering things to him, and like releasing outcomes to him. So if you are asking for prayer,
this is live, and there goes the vacuum.
There it is. If you are asking for guidance, wisdom, prayer about something, and it's been months, weeks, months, and you just feel like you're not getting it yet,
sorry, keep talking.
That's okay. Stay persistent and stay consistent, because it might not be that you're not hearing from God. It might just be that God has something else he wants to do with you in that area. You may need to learn something before he releases the outcome to you. And it may be that you're seeking an outcome that is not in the cards, right? Like, so for example, I talked about this a little bit earlier, of when I've created an offer to sell online, right? Like a coaching package. And I feel like it came directly from God. Like the title came easily, the framework for the program came easily. I feel like I could in picture the woman that this was meant to serve and help, and the problems it was meant to help her with. It all just felt like it was just coming together so perfectly. And so then I start talking about it, and I start offering it, and offering, free discovery calls to jump on a call with me and talk through the offer. Is this a good fit for you? And then nobody would even take advantage of the free stuff. And I'm like, what the heck?
It's free.
Right? What the heck? And this happened with me. My first group program that I tried to sell was called God is Your Guide. And it was all about me teaching women how to start their day with God and live with God as the guide of your life. So basically, like, what does this look like on a practical level? And it was great. It was amazing stuff. Well, my outcome was a sold out group program. I wanted 12 women in it. That's what I was praying for. So I'm like, okay, God, show me which women to talk to. How are we going to get these 12? But again, it's my outcome. This is what I say is supposed to happen with this plan and this content that God gave me, right? And when I finally just fully surrendered it to him after 0 responses, literally after like 3 months of talking about the same program over and over again, and I surrendered it to him, I stepped into an area of obedience that I had been resisting, because I went and I asked God. So another thing that you can do when you feel like you're not getting direction is just go to God and be like, is it me? Is there a barrier that I'm not aware of that I'm putting up unintentionally? Like with you with Elevate, you at one point you got to the point where you were praying not to have people there, but that was how much time passed that wasn't your active prayer, but subconsciously, you were just like, I'm gonna do it because I'm gonna be obedient, but I kind of hope nobody shows up. Like subconsciously, that stuff was, your energy around that was probably already kind of there. And we all kind of have those things. So going and letting God like do a little heart check and letting God show you in areas that you have been shying away from fully stepping into obedience, or you've been doing just the bare minimum to say, I'm listening, but God is asking for 50 feet and you only gave him 10. Right. And so I found myself with this group program. There was another piece where God kept asking me to like meet with local pastors and just introduce myself. And I was scared to death to do it. And I was putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And finally I was just like, okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to start with the church that I attend because I at least know them, and I'm just going to try it. And so I went and I did it. And what did they do? They asked if I would lead a life group, and they gave me open forum for like what the topic was going to be. So what did God is Your Guide become? A Bible study. And it serves women for 3 cycles of different Bible study sessions. I love that. And that's cool. So it was never wasted. And that's something else to kind of remember is like, when you're partnering with God, there's nothing that's ever wasted. You may feel like you're taking actions that got you nowhere, but God is using them behind the scenes, and he's using it to create something, or have you be prepared for when the moment comes. And it may just not be the moment you were planning for, but it will come. And nothing with God is ever wasted. And that's what he's been teaching me. And that's what I would encourage you is like, it's not that you're doing something wrong. It's not that you're not hearing from him. It's just, you have to trust God's timing, and God's timing is quite often, sometimes it's too fast for us. We're like, oh, I'm not ready. Like, whoa, slow your roll, God. And then other times it's slower than we would like because we feel ready and we feel confident and comfortable with this. But God is like, not yet. We're just going to do this one little step. We're not going all the way here yet, but I can see it. I want what's over there. And he's like, nope, not yet. And so it's just really being patient and just willing to be in flow with God in that way, and trust in his timing. And ask him, like, what am I missing? Because I'm not here where I know you called me to be yet, or I haven't heard from you yet. What am I missing? What sin is in my life that I'm not seeing? What stronghold has a grip on me that needs broken? Reveal that to me. So maybe adjust the prayers of like, God, I can't hear you. And what's blocking me from hearing your word? Is there a sin that you need to point out? Is there an activity? Is there unforgiveness in my heart that I am unwilling to do? To forgive, and that could keep me from hearing God. And then, in all things give praise. So thank you, God, that I'm not ready
for something, that your timing is best, that
Mhm.
you are just maybe whispering and I'm not hearing you because you're still working on me. I'm still being sanctified. So thank you for taking the time, because God could just be like, yeah, go do that. And you go do that. And then you're not really ready for it. It's like telling a 6-month-old to go ride a bike. They're not ready to go ride a bike because there's so many things in between there that they need to learn. And we need to thank God that, thank you that I'm not ready to go ride that bike yet. Thank you that you're still working on me and you're still waiting on me. And you are a God that doesn't give up, that you're patient enough to say, you know what? I love her so much that I'm just going to let her take her time until she's fully ready to surrender. And then when she's fully surrendered to me and giving thanks for the time that she felt should have been different, then I'm going to scream so loud that she's going to have such a relationship with me. She's going to have spent so much time getting to know me and study my word, that when she does hear me, it's going to be so undeniable that she's going to just take off running. And I think when we don't hear God, I don't think it's because he's moved. We've moved. There's something in our life that he's like, child, I'm waiting for you to surrender that. And then I'm going to talk to you. I'm here. I haven't left. I'm here, and I'm protecting you, and I'm telling you things all throughout the day. I am sharing my love for you every single day, but you can't hear me because this is there. And if we forget this little piece of the pie and go, God, I'm waiting to hear from you. God, I'm doing this. I'm reading your Bible, but we don't take the time to say, God, okay, I'm recognizing that I haven't heard you. What is it in my life that's keeping me from hearing you? Because I'm the one. Our job is not, God's job isn't to try to have a relationship with us. Our job is to have a relationship with him. We put it, he's there. He's like, I'm there. Here.
We have to pursue him and invite
him. And invite him in.
I
love that.
It made me think of, this is going to show our age, y'all, but but like
we're in our
back in the day when we would listen to the radio, right? And you would have to adjust the knob to hit the, like, let's say a lot of people in this area are probably familiar with Cat Country, so 103.3. Well, if you were on 103.4, you wouldn't hear Cat Country clearly. It'd be like, and then a little bit of country music, you know? And it's kind of how that can be with God, of like, there's something, like you were saying, there's something that's creating static. And it could be a sin that you haven't acknowledged yet. It could be a forgiveness that you haven't acknowledged yet. It could be an area of life that God wants you to put as a priority before this other thing. So for a lot of us, that's our health. God could be calling you to prioritize and focus on your own health a little bit more than putting something else on your plate that's going to pull away from that ability. And so going to God.
God gave you that for me. I know he did.
Yeah,
that was for me.
Thank you, Jesus. Going to God and asking him, like, okay, so, and sometimes you have to turn the dial fiber, you have to like really crank it to get to where that radio station sounds loud and clear. And other times you just have to barely move it. And so you might not be that far off from getting that clear reception, but there's static and there's some little tweak that might need to be adjusted. So I love that, of like, seek your own heart and like really open up God to like put light into the shadows, push away the cobwebs. Like, okay, God, where is this hiding in a dark corner of my mind or my heart? And like bring it to the light, and let's move through it.
Because he's there. You just can't hear him because
you've created, there's a filter or a static, something that's like creating a muffled response.
And I don't think it's always something negative. It could just be that God's like, just not now. I just want
you to rest.
Just pursue me. Just pursue me. Okay, so share a time where, okay, so She Is Known podcast, and it's off of Psalm 139. Talks about how we are known, we are knitted together in our mother's womb. He knew us when it was dark. There's nowhere we can hide from him because his light shines in the darkness and brightens it. No matter what, we are known. So share a time when you truly felt known by God.
Oh, right? And without crying.
Tears are optional, but welcomed.
A time when I felt known by God.
Or like you were like, yeah, God, you see me. That was for me. Your provision.
Yeah, I think it would be right as I was preparing for my first retreat. For me, I oftentimes listen to God best when I'm out on walks. And so I would call them prayer walks, and then I would ask God for divine downloads. And I would just be like, bring it on, God, like I'm ready. The channel's clear.
Yeah.
And it was the first time, like the retreat was planned, the date was there, but I didn't really have sort of a clear I had a topic. It was going to be called Refreshed, and the concept was like where it was before, right after the beginning of the school year, so it's busy moms, and just kind of like, okay, just come on a Saturday and get refreshed in the spirit, refreshed time with God. But other than that, I didn't really have any idea what I was going to talk about. And I just went out on a walk with God, and I was just like, God, it's literally like a week away. I have no notes. Like kind of like what you were saying about Elevate, like panic was setting in.
Yeah.
Women had registered, they paid me, and I was like, okay,
yeah,
and I was like,
Mayday.
Okay, I'm gonna go for a walk. I feel like I have 1,000 other things I should be doing right now, but I'm just gonna go spend time with God. And on that walk, God was like, I mean, I had chills just thinking about like how audible his voice felt to me, and like how clearly it came through. And refresh became an acronym. And so for every letter in the word refresh, there was something about inviting God into an aspect of your life. Like, for example, one of the E's stood for exercise. And it was just a moment for me to talk about like your body as a temple of God, and like incorporating some kind of movement in every day, not only for the benefit of your body, but also the clarity of your mind. And oftentimes too, because if you're inviting God into that time with you, that movement, whether it's a 10-minute walk or some jumping jacks, some stretches, some yoga, like whatever suits your abilities, it was just like that time of like invite God into it. And so when he gave me that acronym, and the content just flowed, and the next thing I knew, I went home from that walk and I had like 9 pages of notes. The content was done, the activities were woven in. It was just so perfect.
I love that.
So perfect. And it was such a release, and I just knew I felt so comfortable and confident with it. And that's where I really feel like God knows my heart, and he knows my heart as a teacher. So he knew that this concept of like, I don't have a lesson plan was driving me nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. And
right. Like
people are going to show up.
Yeah. And that's definitely like, there's so many times, but that's one that stands out as like, I really just felt so cared for, and like, and God was just like,
and he showed up. Yeah. It's awesome when he shows up like that, and he shows off, he shows up, always shows up, but when he shows off, because then you're like, this isn't from me. I love that when he shows off, because we remove self out of it, and we're like, we're just the vessel. This was all God. This was not me at all.
Yeah.
And that's just a confidence builder for the next time. You're like, I know God will provide like he did before. And then he does. And then you're like, see, what do I worry for? He's gonna hook me up.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I just thank you for being here with me today. And I feel like there were so many good little nuggets in there.
I hope so.
And I know that the getting yourself healthy was for me. He's been working on that with me. And so I know he told you that. So where can people follow you? Where can they get a hold of you if they want to talk to you about life coaching? I highly recommend her. A life coach is different than therapy. I've done a lot of therapy. I feel like working with Angela, the life coach, I have healed and released more things than I did with all the things combined. I feel like therapy is a lot more like the frontal cortex and your, fight or flight. I feel like it's a lot of that and scientific growth and understanding why we do things and what, why we do them and how we do them.
Psychological perspective.
Yes. And they're great. They have given me a lot of tools in understanding dynamics with certain people. This was more specific and one-on-one. It was like talking with a friend, which now we've become friends through it, but it was more talking with the friend who can give you tough love, but with grace. And I remember our first meeting, you were like, you said something, I went, oh, and then you're like, is that too tough? We're starting to learn to get to know each other. And I was like, no, that was perfect. Like it was a virtual face smack, but I respond to that. And I know you're very tender, and you kind of mold your teaching and your guidance based on personality. And so for my personality, I need somebody who's black and white, and I don't do well with colors
Yeah.
in that sense. So if somebody was interested in letting go or growing or, you know, all the things, where can they get a hold of you? And
yeah, I think the best place is just like start following me on social media. So on Instagram, I am at Faithful and Fierce Coaching. And then on Facebook, it's just my name, Angela Quinteros. It starts with a Q. And yeah, reach out to me there in the DMs. I love personal connection. I thrive off of just like voice memos, or you can text me, whatever, start the conversation in whichever way is comfortable for you. And then I'll take it from there. But yeah, don't be surprised if I hit you up with a voice memo and just be like, hey, this is Angela. And so now you can hear my voice, and we can connect that way. So yeah, hitting me up in the DMs is probably the best way versus email. I mean, no shame against email, but being in education for so long, I'm just like, I want personal connection. I'm done dealing with emails day after day after day. Like, let's just connect. So yeah, follow me on social media and hop into those DMs, say hello. I do offer free consultation calls, and it's no strings attached, no obligation. It's literally just a chance for us to hop on. We could do Zoom where it's video together, or just like messenger voice memos or whatever. And it's just a chance for us to get to know each other a little bit better, for me to hear more about like why you're considering a life coach. And then I figure out together if this is going to be a good fit and how I can serve you.
Awesome. Well, I'll link her information below too, so it's easier for you just to click on and go reach out to her. And then if you have any questions for either of us, feel free to send a message, and we'll be encouraging you along the way. We'll be praying for you, and just know that you're not alone in your struggles. As women, we're here to create a community. As you saw me getting something off my face, my vacuum going off. This is just live. Yep, exactly.
It's live life.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Wasn't coming out. So we'll see you on the next episode, and thank you for joining us.
Bye.